Hello and welcome to the first episode of the year. This is Roundup number 138. I'm Roshan Karyappa.
And I'm Gunjan Saha, and together we break down the biggest highlights from India's growing startup ecosystem. For the first episode of 2024, we of course will take a look back into the state of startups in 2023. And the next, we try to understand why the $20 billion deal between Adobe and Figma failed to close. These are two industry giants. They were on the brink of collaboration that could have potentially revolutionized the creative landscape, but somehow it went sour. Then we explore the government's plans to amend the IT Act and introduce new rules for AI and generative AI. And we also take a look at India's LLM race and see what's in store for 2024. We'll also recap how we used the internet in 2023. And I don't know if you know, but Indians downloaded over 26 billion mobile apps in last year.
Wait, 26 billion apps.
26 billion mobile apps.
Wow.
So let's get started. But before we jump into these topics, if you're a returning listener, please consider liking this episode and sharing it with your other friends. And if you're a new listener tuning into this channel, we talk a lot about startups. We talk to investors, founders, and other operators. So make sure you subscribe for regular updates. Roshan, kicking off the first episode of 2024, what were your biggest highlights of 2023?
Well, first off, I'm excited to be talking to you folks again. I mean, of course, I'm looking at a camera and I'm looking at Gunjan's face. I'm the producer here. But it's funny how the producer is just the producer, right? There's a certain enigma attached to that. Yeah. But 2023 was a fantastic year, I should say, right? I mean, a lot of learnings coming out of it. To me, I think 2 or 3 themes. First is the whole push to profitability. Obviously, we were coming off of the zero interest era. And 2023 kind of made that real, right? So whether it was private companies, public companies, etc., there was a greater focus on profitability, and startups did remarkably well. Rather than hear of fundraisers and ESOP buybacks and whatnot. I mean, it was a good change to hear about people being EBITDA positive, having positive contribution margins, etc., etc. Right? I mean, these were new terms that we were introduced to. Particularly, I mean, if you look at some of the public companies, right? I mean, whose stock had taken a battering, whether it's Nykaa, Zomato, Paytm, etc. I mean, all of them had tried to innovate in 2023 to get better, right? I mean, to adjust to that quarter tak mentality, which is not that easy, for a startup, right? Because startups, move fast, break things, think long term, and all of those things. I mean, it's that whole juxtaposition of being nimble like a startup and being reliable and sustainable like a public company. I think 2023 was a big learning for some of these startups that way, right? And things flowed top down, I should say. And so whoever you talk to, whether it is founders of seed stage companies or growth stage companies, everyone had the P word ready on their lips at all given times. The other theme for me emerging from 2023 was the focus on deep tech and AI. We had folks like Kaushik Mudda of Ethereal Machines, which you guys know. I mean, was a super hit podcast for us, right? And a few others as well. Prove that India is ready to make the leap from software to hardware and beyond, right? Yeah. So that was fantastic, and we will have to get more fundamental innovation, right? And really, I mean, I hope that 2024 is the year we talk about science and R&D and innovation at the chip level, perhaps, right? LLMs are a start, right? I mean, at least the right direction, I would say. So that was heartening, and there's capital flowing into these neglected areas, previously neglected areas as well, right? So overall, I think those were the 2 very big themes, I should say. And aside from all of the gloom and doom of the markets elsewhere, you look at how Nifty and Sensex have performed. I mean, we're at all-time highs, yeah. Right? So much so that I'm wondering, if if I really have to stop some of the SIPs and whatnot, right? I mean, it's an interesting time, I would say. And 2024 obviously will be a continuation of some of these things, but we have a bunch of variables, right? We have the Indian elections, the US elections, probably half a dozen other countries that are going into election mode this year. right? And all policy is downstream from politics. So we don't know, how some of the economics of startups and VC and investing will change. So yeah, a lot to look forward to in 2024, and I hope it's kind to all of us.
Yeah. Well, this has been a good year for us as well, right? I mean, when we started 2023, we got this swanky new studio.
Yeah.
We did our first, Startup Operator on the road. We did our first Startup Operator live event. And I'm just excited for what's more to come in 2020. A lot more of these. And I think what I'm most excited about is to, interact with founders from tier 2, tier 3 cities. We had many of them in the podcast last year. And hopefully we'll have many, many more in this year as well.
Yeah. How many episodes do you think we put out last year?
I think definitely around 75.
75.
Right? Yeah, I mean, if you...
And how many days... how many episodes per days is that?
This feels like my math exam, man. But wait, 75, 365. Around
all right, we'll be back after a short break.
It's around 5 days for one episode, which is not bad.
Well, it's certainly better than, I would say 95, 97% of the podcasters out there. So yeah, we got that.
Okay, let's look at 2023 in terms of some numbers. Indian startups till date have raised a total of $146 billion in funding, and we have 112 total unicorns in the ecosystem. India is now the second largest startup ecosystem globally, second only to the US. Of course, there were challenges last year. We saw around 35,000 layoffs and the shutdown of 17 startups that raised a total funding of $214 million. But despite these challenges, companies like Grow, Fractal, Indify, and Cartrade performed really well. The total funding in 2023 was $9 billion, which was a 35% decline year on year. But the startup ecosystem still remains resilient. We have a lot of learnings. And of course, there's a lot of more potential for the Indian entrepreneurial community.
Yeah. See, I mean, just in continuation of the third point I made on market exuberance in India, right? I mean, that extends beyond the markets itself. I think there's a certain optimism in India that we sort of take for granted. It's not the same outside, right? There's this guy, Josh Wolf, who's a VC at Lux Capital, who's just visited India, right? I mean, incidentally, like 2-3 others have visited India during these holiday season. And you should look at his timeline. The things that we take for granted are the things that most surprise foreigners, right? And there's a sense of optimism here that is not common elsewhere. And I've had a lot of people visiting as well. In fact, one of our guests, Shruti Gandhi as well, right? From Array VC. I mean, she visited India and she had a lot of nice things to say about, infrastructure and general startup scene and so on, right? So that I think is something for us to be, really kicked about, I think.
Yeah. Well, even Dua Lipa spent her New Year's in India, so...
Priorities.
All right, let's talk about the Adobe-Figma deal. Adobe had attempted to acquire Figma for approximately $20 billion, but this deal was blocked by the European Commission and the Competition and Market Authority. These are the regulatory authorities of the UK and EU respectively. Adobe XD, which is the product that most closely resembles Figma, it is internally considered to be a failed product. And from what the general counsel had to say is that there's absolutely no overlap between the customers of the two products. Regulators had been very focused on the newer doctrines of antitrust law. They say that the future competition is a critical part of the antitrust analysis. The only way to solve a future competition issue is not to do the deal, and that is essentially what the regulators were telling them. Now, Roshan, in your opening comments, you mentioned that this was always doomed to fail. Why did you say that?
Look, before that, right? I mean, Adobe has struggled forever to make the transition from app to internet, right? And not just that. I mean, basis that, from being like a single player only to, a more collaborative approach. And many different folks have tried to, solve this, whether it is Omni or Sketch and plenty of others, right? But Figma has just really run away with that market, right? I mean, they're clocking $700+ million ARR, which is an insane amount of money, right? And probably in the last 4 or 5 years, that's about it. This was doomed to fail because obviously this would, get in the eyes of all of these, whether it's the Federal Trade Commission or whether it is some of these European regulators and so on and so forth, because this was actually, I mean, I think it's way higher than 20 billion, right? Because the Adobe stock jumped after this news, and considering that it was part cash and part stock, I mean, it is way more than 20 billion itself. So it will have a certain chilling effect on startups, I would say. Less so for Indian startups in that sense, because I mean, again, 20, 25 billion, 30 billion, we've not had those kind of exits in India, right? I mean, the highest has been about 16 billion for Flipkart. Right, and that has been an outlier, right? I mean, we haven't had anything even remotely close over the last 20 years of startup activity in India. So it will have a chilling effect in the sense that, look, I mean, if you think about exit options for startups, what are they? They're either they can go public, or they can have some kind of M&A through these sort of deals, right? Now, if you rule out deals at a certain level, let's say 20 billion, right? But is it 20 billion or is it 15 billion? Now, is it 15 billion or is it 12 billion? We don't know, right? We really don't know. So the ceiling hasn't been defined in that sense, right? So a lot of these larger M&A deals have come under scrutiny. And this Adobe and Figma deal was just one. I mean, there were others as well around the same time, 2, 3 others. I mean, I'm not able to recollect. And all of it is bound to have an impact, more so in the US, I would say, right, than here. So luckily for Figma, they had some kind of a breakup fee baked into this entire arrangement, in the sense that, I mean, if the M&A didn't happen, they would get $1 billion, and likely they will get that, right? I mean, of course, it's not as straightforward, and it'll go through some sort of pushback and whatnot. But for Figma, I mean, they can still list in the markets. They won't get that kind of premium that Adobe was offering, right? Markets, even for the best of best companies in the US, I mean, they're trading at high single digits at this point. So that is not the 20-25x valuation that they were kind of getting with the Adobe deal. So maybe the employees will be a little sadder, right? They're a few billion short, but yeah, I mean, we'll see how this kind of pans out. The FTC with Lina Khan has been fairly active, right? And the European Commission, obviously, I mean, they have a real eye for all this sort of antitrust and whatnot. So should be interesting.
Yeah, but this would have been an interesting deal, right? Because Adobe,
Designers hate Adobe,
yeah,
right? I mean, you
and
can
rightly
ask.
so, right? It's
Yeah, I
like
mean, because of all the licenses and upgrades and this and that and whatnot, right? I mean, yeah. You can ask the producer as
Yeah.
well, right? I mean, they absolutely hate Adobe, but yeah, I mean, they can celebrate, I suppose.
Moving on to the next topic, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology is planning to introduce amendments to the IT Act of 2021 that will require platforms using AI algorithms or large language models to ensure that they're free from any bias. These amendments will prohibit the use of biased datasets and mandate platforms to follow these guidelines. Apart from the safeguards of preventing bias in AI and language models, the IT rules may also bring new regulations to tackle deepfake, synthetic content, and explicit instructions for platforms on loan apps, said one of the persons who is aware of this development. Now, a really interesting point that comes up here is that today's large language models have been trained on human generated content which is available online.
Yeah.
But now, as more and more AI generated content comes up, it's gonna start feeding, the AI model is gonna start feeding itself. Now, I do not know how that will play out in the real life scenario.
Yeah, that's a good point that you bring up. I think obviously these models will have to recognize, machine generated data and human generated data for starters, right? Uh, but data becomes so much more important, right? I mean, I don't know if internet as it has existed thus far, where pretty much everyone can scrape any information they want off the web, will exist going further, right? Because if I'm able to train a model on, let's say, Twitter's data, right, which is humongous, right? I mean, they have God knows how many petabytes or whatever gigaflops, what are they called, whatever amount of data, right? I mean, my model gets that much more better, right? And so I mean, Twitter may say that they may start charging people for that. Actually, that if you have to like sort of use my data for training your LLM, I mean, you might need to pay me a subscription fee or something, or they may even forbid that kind of a thing, right? I mean, because each of these folks, I mean, all the large folks are developing their own AI,
Yeah.
right? Elon has Grok,
Have you
right?
tried it out yet?
No, I haven't. I mean, it's right there calling out to
Yeah.
me on the side panel, but for some reason, I mean, I just been too freaked out to sort of like click and like explore, right? But it's something to consider. I mean, one is the whole data aspect for sure, right? Who gets to use some of this data and how? And second, this problem of deepfakes and whatnot. I mean, look, right now everything is fun and games, right? You saw those melody memes,
Yeah.
right, where Modi ji is singing to the Italian Prime Minister Meloni in multiple different ways, and yeah, we're all laughing at that stuff. But yeah, it can get really serious as well, right? I mean, and it can, you know, uh, extend beyond all these celebrities to someone you know. So I think regulation obviously is required, but how the hell we're going to manage to sort of define
Yeah.
some of these things is just beyond me. I mean, I have no answer to
Not
that.
just define, but also tackle, because there will be, those people who break the law.
Yeah,
How
see,
are you going
some
to
of
tackle
them
them?
say that you just have to go back to your first principles and look at some of the fundamental free speech laws that have been formulated across the world, and just hold them to that. And some of them say that no, I mean, newer laws have to evolve, and so on and so forth. So I don't know. I don't really know the answer to this. I mean, maybe we should get like someone who can talk on AI regulation on the podcast, and really probe them on something like this. This is a good topic. Yeah.
Well, also last year when Sam Altman visited India, he really downplayed the possibility of India coming up with its own LLMs. But there's a very heated up LLM race going on in our country. There's Krutrim, which is a multilingual AI model in 22 Indian languages, and it outperformed GPT-4 in Indic languages. Then we have India's first Hindi LLM, which is built on Meta's AI architecture. It's called OpenHathi. We have Bharat GPT that empowers developers with multilingual virtual assistant in 12 plus languages. Zoho has built a smaller AI model for specific domain problems. There's Indus project, which is Tech Mahindra's open source LLM. We discussed the partnership between Reliance and NVIDIA and Tata and NVIDIA to develop foundational LLM models and also upskill AI talent in the country. And of course, we have the likes of Bhashini, AI for Bharat, Project Vani. So a lot of exciting things happening within the AI domain within the country.
Yeah.
And there are multiple reports that claim that India's talent pool is the best suited to take the AI development forward.
Yeah. I'm really excited about the second order effects of some of this, right? I mean, which is that people who will use some of these LLMs to build more practical applications for the likes of you and me. And that could be very India specific as well, because they're trained on India data sets, and we're building for Indian solutions basically.
Yeah.
So that could be interesting, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, India is what, 1/4 or 1/5 of the entire world's population, right? So, and we're also the country with the largest number of languages.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. So in 2023, Indians downloaded a total of 25.96 billion apps.
Wait. How many less than 26 billion is that?
Four-
So welcome to the math class today.
400,000.
Wow. All right. Plus 5
Wait,
marks.
40,000. 400,000.
We'll be back after a short break.
Okay, so while almost 26 billion is a large number, this is still 2 billion less than what we did in 2022. We downloaded 28 billion apps in 2022. Indian app stores earned a total of $415 million collectively, which is a notable increase. Yet, India ranks 25th in the global earnings. Google, of course, retained its position as the most popular app in Google in 2023, accumulating a total of 449 million downloads. But while all of these things have been going in the forefront, PhonePe last year challenged Google Play Store in India with the announcement of its Indus App Store. It offers Indian Android developers a fee-free alternative for distribution apps. I think, yeah, this year might just see some sort of traction in that.
Yeah, so I'm going to stick my neck out and say this whole Google Play and App Store duopoly will kind of break in the next couple of years, right? I mean, or I think that whole contractual or pricing arrangement will start to like change in more ways than one, right? I mean, you're already seeing that the lawsuit that Epic brought against Google, right? And Google is right now, I mean. Talking to Epic to basically like enter into some sort of a financial arrangement to still be on the Play Store, right? And so, I mean, anyone who has some sort of leverage and clout will start renegotiating with the likes of Google and Apple if they haven't already, right? Because that whole 30% margin is a lot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even if you take SaaS at 60-70% gross margins, I mean 30% is significant. What about some of the other businesses that that make like 30 or 40% gross margin in the first place, right? I mean, it's insane. You can't run a business on that sort of economics. So yeah, I think something will definitely give way in the next couple of years. I would say my hunch is that in the near term or in the midterm, Apple and Google will start becoming deal makers.
Interesting to see how this will play out. Well, in a bold move amidst the increasing global reliance on AI, Uttar Pradesh has set its sight on constructing India's very first AI city in Lucknow. The UP Electronics Corporation has released an EOI, which is an express of interest, seeking proposals for the design, development, and operation of an AI city. They've invited real estate developers to participate and submit proposals for it. And for this project, the government has already set aside 40 acres of land and has also announced financial incentives, including a one time capex support and 100% stamp duty exemption. Now, Lucknow is already a host to a centers of excellence specializing in fields such as AI, medtech, showcasing extensive integrations of AI technologies. And the state is also planning to become a $1 trillion state GDP state by in the next 4 to 5 years. But how realistic do you think this is? This is an AI city.
Well, I mean, it depends on the amount of money they're going to spend, right? And of course, I mean, see the what do you say? I mean, the larger significance of this is that focus on AI, right? I mean, if and when we have this sort of an AI city or whatever, don't expect like robots to be roaming around and serving you chai and whatnot, right? But really, the larger goal or the objective is to get people to focus on AI, and to that end, I think it could be an interesting move. Let's see
Yeah.
how it sort of plays out.
Well, this first AI city in India kind of reminds me of the line or Neom that is being built
Just
in.
$1 trillion short.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about the first fundraisers of 2024. Food and beverage chain VR Hospitality raised $10 million from Axis Bank, Gruhas, UC Inclusive Credit, NB Ventures, and angel investors. Dairy brand Country Delight raised $20 million from Temasek, Seviora Capital, and Venturi Partners. Captain Fresh raised $13.25 million from Nekanti Seafoods and Shakti Finvest. Wiz Freight raised $11.24 million from SBI Investments, Tiger Global, Nippon Express Fund, and Axlor Technologies Fund. So not off to a bad start, but of course we're still not, seeing the sort of stellar fundraiser we saw in 2021, 2022. But again, I don't think that was expected.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. Couple of things. Axis Bank, SBI, Indian banking represent, right? So they're in the game. And look at some of these D2C folks, right? Captain Fresh and so on. Yeah, I mean, this whole food supply chain is up for disruption, I would say, right? This farm to fork model needs innovation for sure, right? I mean, we spoke about this in the episode we did with Mukundan of Stellabs as well, that that 30 or 40% of the food is wasted, and that entire supply chain ecosystem is something that requires a lot of optimization. you know yeah, one of the most lucrative businesses in India is to set up a warehouse, actually, really. So
Are you opening up a warehouse?
not anytime soon, still committed to SaaS, but yeah, so good, we're off to a good start, I would say.
Awesome. So, for the talk of the town section, I wanted to pick Jason Lemkin's tweet. He talks about the 5 best pieces of advice I ever got from my mentors. And, he talks about meeting customers, always recruiting, not letting go of the good ones, finding a great mentor, and much more. Roshan, what do you have anything to add to this?
I love Jason's tweets and blogs and whatnot. I mean, I think he is amazing. He's the granddaddy of SaaS, I would say, right? And always has very practical wisdom. That what he says is weighted by his own personal experience, or maybe what he's seen in the market. So yeah, all those five things he mentions are absolute gold, right? There's a tendency in difficult times to sort of creep into a shell, not talk to anyone, and so on. No, you should do the absolute opposite. Go and meet all of your customers, especially the ones who are using your product a lot. Talk to them, understand from them, and be more relevant to them. Uh, don't let the good ones go, which is that people and roles have to evolve. Make sure that you care for their careers and so on and so forth. Make them adapt as well, and plenty of others. I mean, he explains this stuff better than me. So I would definitely urge you guys to check out Jason's tweet and also check out Saster as well. I know a lot of you all already know Saster, but yeah, for the 3 or 4 people who might not have heard of Saster, I mean, do check out Jason Lemkin and Saster. They produce amazing, amazing content.
This is not a sponsored post.
Of course not.
Awesome. So, off to a great start in the first week of 2024. Hopefully, the year will pick up.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of new learnings, a lot of new announcements to be made. So, make sure you're following the Startup Operator on your favorite podcast platform and also on social media. If you want these updates to be delivered straight into your WhatsApp inbox, you'll find a link in the description below. So, that's it. We'll be back with more exciting updates next week.
Yeah. Back to your regular programming. See you guys.